Here's Andrea. Perfect. At the bottom there. Kiss. Hi, Chairman. Live now.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is a meeting of the HRM Active Transportation Advisory Committee for April the 18th, 2024. I'll call the meeting to order. My name is Hugh Millward. I'll be chairing the meeting. The time right now is 4:35 p.m. I'll begin with a land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located on Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. I'll begin with a roll call. So I've already given my name, Hugh Millward. Our vice chair is Douglas Wetmore. Could you identify yourself, Douglas?
Present, Hugh. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll run through the rest, and if you can just say your name, introduce yourself, so that we hear your audio. Councillor Patty Cottle. Is Councillor here? Not yet. Peter Zimmer.
Peter Zimmer for the High Cycling Coalition. I'm here from Vancouver Island.
Oh, well, welcome.
And using a brand new iPad, so I may have not completely adjusted yet.
Yeah, well, you look fine right now. Thank you, Peter. Holly Woodall. Holly Woodall. She's not joined yet.
I'm just looking up here, Hugh. It's Vice Chair Douglas Wetmore. I do see Holly Woodall in the attendees tab, so it looks like they might be currently trying to join. If one of our admins could let them in.
Yeah, I'm promoting now.
Holly Woodall. Is she trying to join Olawumi?
Yes.
There.
Yes. Okay. Hello, Holly Woodall. Are you here?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Do anything.
Yes, we see you. Thank you. Paul Young.
Yes, hello here. It's Paul.
Hello, Paul. Thank you. Annika Ropel.
Yes, hi, I'm here.
Hello, Annika. Milena Casanovicius. Milena not here? Okay. Michelle Mahoney.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello, Michelle.
Hello.
Miles McCormick. Miles McCormick? Not here. And Brittany McLean.
Here, thanks you, representing Cycling Nova Scotia.
Okay, thank you. And I understand Elizabeth Pugh will be joining us later. Were there any regrets, Olawumi?
No regrets. I don't receive any.
You didn't see any regrets. Okay.
Just received a message. Milena is also having a hard time getting into the meeting. So if we can just keep an eye out for her to join.
Sorry, who was that?
Milena is having a hard time joining.
Okay.
I had a difficult time trying to join as well, but I eventually got in.
Yeah, actually, I did too. So I know it asked me for my passcode and it wouldn't accept that.
Yeah.
But then I went in through my browser. I guess that's what you need to do. I'm not sure. Anyway, we do have a quorum. We'll proceed with our support staff today. Our legislative assistant is Olawumi Odiinka Apantaku. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, Olawumi.
No, that's correct. I did well.
And hopefully David McIsaac is also with us. He's manager of active transportation. Is David with us?
Hey,
Yes.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, David. All right. And I guess it would be good to start, or appropriate to start with just a note that a previous member of the committee, a fairly recent previous committee member, Andrew Taylor, sadly passed away recently. And we are sorry to hear that. And we send condolences to friends and family. Approval of minutes of the February 15th meeting. You recall there wasn't a meeting in March. The draft minutes were sent to you for February 15th. Were there any errors or omissions noted? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to approve those draft minutes. That requires a mover and a seconder.
I can move that, Hugh. Vice Chair
Okay.
Douglas Wetmore.
Thank you, Douglas. And seconder?
I can second Brittany McLean.
Thank you, Brittany. So the motion is that the minutes of February the 15th be approved as circulated. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, please say nay or raise your hand. None opposed. So I'll declare that that motion carries and that the draft minutes have been approved as circulated. Item 3 is approval of the order of business for today and approval of any additions or deletions. Olawumi, are there any additions or deletions from the clerk's office?
Additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you. And I'll ask the members, do you have any items to add to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. Again, I need a mover and a seconder.
Also move.
Thank you, Peter. And
Holly
seconder?
will second.
Okay, Holly, thank you.
Thank you.
So the agenda is approved. Sorry. The motion is that the agenda be approved as presented. And I'll call for the question now. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
And any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none opposed, that motion carries and the agenda will be as circulated. Item 4, there was no business arising from the minutes. So item 5 is a call for declaration of conflict of interest relating to today's agenda. If any committee member feels they have a conflict of interest, now is the time to declare it. Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item 6, and there is no deferred business. So item 7 is correspondence. Olawumi, has there been any correspondence received by the clerk's office?
No correspondence received from the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you. And petitions, have there been any petitions received by the clerk's office? Olawumi.
Petitions received.
No petitions received. Okay. So let's move on to item 7.3.1, a presentation by Craig Ross. I hope Craig Ross is with us, on active transportation and recreation at the St. Margaret's Bay Stewardship Association. Craig Ross, is Craig with us?
Hi.
Okay, Craig, are you ready to present?
I sure am. Are you guys able to load my slides that I submitted, or do you want me to share my screen?
Olawumi, are you going to show the slides?
Yes, I'll share the slide from here.
Thank you.
Okay. And as is normal, there is a 10-minute limit on the presentation. As long as you don't go too far over that, you should be fine.
Okay, I
So,
should be about 8 minutes, 30 seconds.
Okay, fine. Away you go then.
Okay, good evening. My name is Craig Ross. I'm a member of the St. Margaret's Bay Stewardship Association Board of Directors and the current chair of the SMBSA Active Transportation and Recreation Committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce our organization and our committee. So next slide, please. The St. Margaret's Bay Stewardship Association was established as a charitable, nonprofit volunteer association in 2003. Inspired by the natural beauty of the Bay, our focus is to safeguard and enhance its unique quality of life. Our purpose is to protect and enhance the Bay's natural environment, heritage, and its community. In that role, we act as a spokesperson and facilitator for Bay residents on issues that range from commercial development to environmental challenges. We are also involved in coastal and watershed stewardship and preservation, along with celebrating the Bay's history and culture. Our vision is to be recognized as a valued partner within our communities, working together, taking active roles in creating and supporting a sustainable and thriving Bay for current and future generations. Next slide, please. The St. Margaret's Bay Stewardship Association Active Transportation and Recreation Committee was formed as an ad hoc committee in early 2023. Prior to the formation of the committee, the board determined that there was a space for us to advocate for active transportation and active recreation within Upper Tantallon and the St. Margaret's Bay watershed at large. The mission of the Active Transportation and Recreation Committee is to advocate for active transportation and active recreation within the St. Margaret's Bay watershed and its communities. The purpose of our Active Transportation and Recreation Committee is to advocate for active transportation within our community, focusing on encouraging community members to adopt active transportation options when possible, while recognizing that these options must be safe and efficient to promote their use. Investigate and catalog active recreation opportunities within the St. Margaret's Bay watershed, and engage with government and stakeholders to promote and protect active transportation and active recreation within the St. Margaret's Bay watershed and its communities. So we use a pretty standard working definition of active transportation, but we also include non-motorized watercraft because we are a coastal community. And our working definition of active recreation is activities engaged in for the purpose of relaxation, health and well-being, or enjoyment that require physical exertion and are primarily focused on human-powered activity. It's pretty broad in scope, so we've narrowed our focus to human-powered outdoor recreation on land and water within the St. Margaret's Bay watershed. We see a lot of crossover between active transportation and active recreation within the community. That's why we're focusing on both. So next slide, please. Thanks. We recently conducted a factors analysis of the current active transportation situation in our community and would like to present some of the assets and challenges that we've discovered during our analysis. Current assets, the St. Margaret's Bay Trail. It forms the spine of our existing active transportation network. The existing sidewalks, trails, and conventional bike lanes within the community, and the upcoming improvements on Peggy's Cove Road, including lane widening, improved sight lines, and a conventional bike lane. Some of the challenges, walkability. This is a major challenge in our community. Our main arteries are 2-lane roads that in some places lack a paved shoulder or sidewalk. On good days, this makes walking a challenge. On bad weather days or when snow accumulates, this creates a real hazard, especially for kids walking to school or the bus stop. Many of our neighborhoods are disconnected from one another, often with only a single road connecting the subdivision to a main artery. For example, houses in the Stillwater Lake subdivision are only a few hundred meters away from houses on Leeward Avenue in Highland Park, but they are a 7-kilometer walk or bike ride apart. Connecting our neighborhoods would give residents the option of staying safe on residential streets by walking or rolling on a main artery. This could also foster community cohesion. Terrain and distance from home to the workplace. It's 30 kilometers to downtown from the Tantallon Library. It's also very hilly out here. It's really popular with the Strava folks because of the hills. This discourages a lot of people from walking or riding to their destinations, but we do have a park and ride terminal. Blended commutes utilizing active transportation and transit make the distance to downtown more manageable. Our current network of active transportation assets like sidewalks and conventional bike lanes is disjointed. We have a bike lane that ends with no warning, crosswalks without associated sidewalks, and sidewalks that end in illogical locations. Community safety priorities. Less than a year ago, a devastating wildfire tore through our community. This fire destroyed 200 homes and buildings, 800 hectares of forest, and displaced approximately 16,000 residents. Some of these families are still not back in their homes. Many of us were trapped in our neighborhoods, trying to reach Hammonds Plains roads on the limited exit roads out of our subdivisions as the fire burned around us. Even though the fire had been burning out of control for a considerable amount of time, many of us received no evacuation alert until after the fire had burned through our neighborhoods. Trust was broken that day. We feel that this trust must be restored before residents will be willing to accept a rate increase to support the construction of active transportation infrastructure. We believe one way that the municipality could restore this trust would be to prioritize the construction of emergency egress routes out of and between subdivisions. These egress routes could double as active transportation pathways to improve neighborhood connectivity. We recommend that the municipality explores the option of constructing neighborhood connectivity pathways that could double as emergency egress routes. This disaster has presented us with both challenges and opportunities. With a little bit of work to our current active transportation network and the strategic construction of emergency egress routes, we could build a great network that connects neighborhoods, fosters community, and facilitates emergency egress. An amazing active transportation networks that meets residents' needs is possible if we're willing to think outside the box. Next slide, please. During the recent, when Public Works staff hosted public engagement sessions in Upper Tantallon last March, they asked 3 questions to the attendees. The St. Margaret's Bay Stewardship Association and Active Transportation and Recreation Committee would like to offer our responses to these questions. These answers are the views of the committee and not the St. Margaret's Bay Stewardship Association in its entirety. Question number 1 was, do you think Upper Tantallon is a good location for sidewalks or multi-use pathways? Our answer is yes, if the infrastructure meets the identified needs of the community and is constructed in an ecologically sound manner. Question 2, do you understand and support the proposed area tax rate hike? And our answer is, in the opinion of the Active Transportation and Recreation Committee, no. We do not believe that the proposed rate hike addresses municipal taxation in an equitable manner. We also feel that the approach was mismanaged. In our opinion, the process should have started by identifying the active transportation needs of the community, determining the associated costs of meeting those needs, developing a viable concept, then approaching the community with transparency so that residents can make an informed choice. Do you agree with the preliminary area rate boundary? If not, where do you think the boundary should be? We do not feel that we have enough information to appropriately answer this question. We believe the answer lies in a holistic needs assessment and the public survey results. Our hope is the result is equitable and respects the wishes of residents. We are looking forward to seeing the results of the public survey, and we expect that the municipal government will honor the community's wishes. Next slide, please. Thank you. The St. Margaret's Bay Stewardship Association is committed to creating a healthier, more active, and more connected community by focusing on both the physical well-being of our community members and the overall environmental health of the St. Margaret's Bay watershed. On behalf of the Stewardship Association, I would like to thank you for your time. That ends my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Craig. As is usual, we invite comments and questions from the committee members. And according to Administrative Order 1, initially you are allowed, just a moment, 5 minutes to speak on the agenda item. So we'll have a round of comments, questions, and I'm going to call those by name. Did Mars McCormick join us yet? I guess not. Brittany McLean, would you like to start?
Sure. I don't have any questions at this time, but thanks, Craig, for your presentation.
No problem, Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany. Holly Woodall?
First, I'd like to say that was a very good presentation, and I appreciate the work that your association does. Is there anything specifically that you would like us to do?
I think the biggest thing from our perspective is the approach to active transportation, and particularly the Rural Active Transportation Initiative. Like, I think the way to go from our perspective is to figure out the needs of the community before asking them to pay an extra 33 cents per $100 of assessed value, especially when there was a lot of issues that were known in the community prior to the wildfire, and those issues still haven't been addressed. So it's a really hard pill to swallow for a lot of folks out here when the city comes asking for more tax money and there's still some huge deficiencies in public safety.
Okay, we'll probably come back to that question after we've gone through. Thank you, Holly. Paul Young.
Yeah, hey, Gate, thanks. I gotta like anybody who's got a bike on a stand in the background. That's a good thing. So I really like and support your idea of encouraging connections through crosswalk type affairs from one disparate subdivision to another, and I think that especially makes sense in the Tantallon area where they were kind of tracked in one at a time without thinking about the bigger picture. I personally think it's kind of sad that we have to, make a case for these stronger by including the wildfire argument. I think it's not a bad argument. It's a fine argument, but it's the connections between active transportation connections between subdivisions shouldn't have to need an extra push. They should stand on their own. So that's just my thoughts. I totally agree. I think that's a really good start, and it would certainly help people move between, find comfortable active transportation, walking, hiking, biking, whatever, between their comfortable areas and avoid those unpleasant main arteries. So I don't have any other further questions. I wish you all the best of luck, and you certainly are going the right way.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, Paul. Annika Ropel.
Yeah, hi. I think this is a really good example actually of adaptation and mitigation, so that the recognizing that wildfires and flooding are going to be a bigger part of our future moving forward, and that but also that AT has its own value in and of itself, and but also the community resiliency there too of connection. So I just really think that this addresses that our climate response in such a really nice way. I also think that this is such a great example of AT working in rural parts of our province that often kind of get dismissed. So yeah, thank you for your presentation. And I think too, maybe the rural AT approach is obviously relatively new, and maybe it needs to be adjusted and adapted based on how communities responding. And so I think there's great value in what you're recommending.
Thanks, Annika.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Annika. Did Councillor Cottle join us?
No, she just sent a request. She won't be able to make it.
Oh, okay. All right. Peter Zimmer. Peter?
Yes, I had to find my unmute button.
Oh, okay.
Different interface. Thank you very much. Craig, it was a really good presentation. Question that I have is looking forward in time and then developments of how people are getting about. I wonder if your model of active transportation has yet included the issue about micromobility, i.e. electric assisted bikes, scooters, golf carts, which are really ways that people get about independently, that can share or have parallel paths that support their mobility that's independent of cars. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, Peter, I agree with you. For a long time, like after I left my last career and I was working in bike shops, I was a confirmed Luddite. I didn't believe in electric assist for anything. And then as injuries from my previous career caught up to me, and I've ended up with a bilateral hip impingement, osteoarthritis in both hips, both knees, bone spurs pretty much everywhere. I've purchased an eMTB, and I use that for getting around. And in my experience out here, it really flattens out the hills and makes getting around a lot easier. And I'm all for it. Like, we don't really have the infrastructure to support micro mobility as we see it in the downtown and in the core. And I don't know, I personally wouldn't want to go down the Stillwater Hill on an e-scooter, but but there's definitely space there for that to happen. And I think it's just another factor that should be considered in the plan.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep.
Thank you. Did Milena Casanavicius join us yet?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I've made it in.
Good. Did you hear the presentation?
I did hear the presentation. I just want to apologize briefly. I there's some glitch. I don't have my webcam today, so I apologize to the public and to the committee here. I do have a comment and probably the same question as Holly asked earlier. Craig, excellent presentation. My comment is this: so I'm closely tied in with actually a firefighter who's a good friend of mine who was out fighting the fires, and his entire home burnt down. So they're still waiting for their home to be put in, and they, had they not gotten out of there would have been a lot of people that would have been injured. Thank goodness people were not. I fully agree with you, contrary to David McIsaac is on here now. I'm a big component of, as I am completely blind, of sidewalks. My parents live in the St. Margaret's Bay area. I love walking with my guide dog, but it's almost virtually impossible to get onto a trail without risking my life. This is madness. This is the HRM. I fully agree with the proposals. I like how you've tied in active transportation. I think it's wonderful, especially for the St. Margaret's Bay area. I live in the city, and it's long overdue as far as I'm concerned. But I'm still a little confused what it is that you would like us as an advisory committee to propose to, relay back to councillors, because I'd like to sign whatever you'd like, but what is it that you would like us, Active Transportation Advisory Committee, to support you in?
The biggest thing for us is we're really advocating, and if you guys could support us with it, is to approach active transportation, rural active transportation in Upper Tantallon from a different angle. Like figure out what we need out here, not just as multi-use pathways or sidewalks, but at the hub, but just connecting our neighborhoods or getting us to the hub safely. Or all these other things that are happening, like, you know, the kids go to the bus stop here and there's no shoulders. And then in the wintertime when the snow plows, it just pushes the snow off to the edge of the roadway and the kids have to walk on the roadway. And good luck getting people to drive the speed limit out here. And
Yes, I know. Yes.
so just, you know, advocating for the community and recommending that the approach to active transportation out here is holistic, a holistic needs assessment covering everything. And then taking that instead of the current approach where the public engagement sessions were, hey, how does everybody feel about a tax increase? And people didn't really know what they were even going to get for that tax increase. Just a tax increase. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Craig, and I think we may propose a motion when we've gone through the question and answer period. So we'll probably come back to that. Okay. Is that okay for now, Milena?
I'm sorry, I missed that. The chat box was going. Could you repeat that, please, Mr. Chair?
Oh, sorry. What I said is we may come up with a motion once we've gone through the question and answer period that addresses the holistic needs assessment.
I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
So Michelle Mahoney.
Yeah, great presentation. I don't, the wheels are rolling in my head and I'm taking it all in. So yeah, I'm glad that that you've brought this to this committee and that because outside communities outside of the core, I guess Halifax core is important to consider as well.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. And oh, sorry, that was Michelle, wasn't it?
Michelle.
Yeah. And Elizabeth Pugh, she was going to join later. I guess she's not joined us yet. Douglas Wetmore.
Thank
Douglas?
you, Hugh. Thank you for the presentation. I don't really have many comments to add beyond what's already been said, but again, everything you've shared makes sound sense to me. So I'd be glad to support anything that's put forward. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. And I see Councillor Cottle is with us now. Hello, Councillor.
Hi. Apologies. I don't know if anyone else has this problem, but I actually have 3 invites to this meeting in my calendar, and all the links lead me to some weird meeting that's not this meeting. And they're coming from you, Holly. And I'm not sure why the invites are coming from Holly, but there's something amiss, because this isn't the first time I've had these issues trying to get into this meeting, and I just would ask the clerk to please look into that and try to fix it. I have been watching. I watched the presentation online on YouTube, so I caught most of it. And just want to say thank you very much for bringing this presentation forward. I think a lot of the issues that you raise aren't unique to your community, but they are, things that I'm hearing of in other communities that have been identified for the Rural Sidewalk Program, including Brookside area and the Sambro area. There's a question about what services are they getting already for tax dollars, so why would there be more tax? And what exactly would these sidewalks and trails look like? And I think one of the biggest concerns is that they're not going to go far enough into the communities. They're only kind of for short sections, but it's like, how do the residential areas connect to the sidewalks? So I agree. I think that as we continue to pursue this project of looking at this rural AT infrastructure, I think a lot of questions are coming to the forefront that haven't been all worked out. and that, you know, in some cases we'll have to look at the feedback that we're getting from everybody and, you know, kind of perhaps go back to the drawing board and see, like, you know, has there been uptake? If not, why? And what needs to happen to actually support and improve AT in our rural communities, our villages. I think I see it being tied very closely to our rural planning that's going to be happening, and I know we're not there yet. But thank you for the presentation. You know, it's good to have all of these things articulated so clearly and in such a precise format.
Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you. Sorry, Douglas, did you have questions or not?
No, you got me. We're good.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I could say something myself. Couple of things. A big issue, I think, is the idea of an overall holistic needs assessment. And I do find it somewhat odd that the municipality is proposing an area rate for, presumably, for these AT measures without specifying what exactly the AT measures are. And I guess that's a question we could address to David McIsaac, why that happens. But before I do that, the other point that I picked up on is the need to connect the various subdivisions with walkways, yes, but with walkways that are sufficiently wide and sufficiently firm that they would serve as emergency exit egress routes. And I think that's extremely important, that you can kill two birds with one stone by connecting the walkways in that way, by connecting the subdivisions in that way. I wonder, would it be appropriate to just ask David McIsaac whether a holistic needs assessment has been made, or whether one is planned for this area? David. Is David here?
Yeah. So I guess the proposition or the facility type that was proposed in Upper Tantallon and in all the communities, the 5 communities that we've been in, is a sidewalk or a multi-use pathway in kind of the main community center. So the main drag of the village center, wherever it is. Upper Tantallon is unique among the 5 communities in that there's almost like, you could almost build a case for, there's kind of 2 community centers, or commercial centers might be the best way to frame it. They're both kind of, you know, plaza behind parking lot, or they have aspects of that. So it also, you know, it distinguishes itself from sort of like a Hubbard's or a Musquodoboit Harbor situation. But basically that's the purpose of the program is to have sidewalks or multi-use pathways on the main drag of the rural community. I guess the other thing I could say with Upper Tantallon is that it's unique from all the other communities that we've been in that the other communities already had some kind of a community plan or a concept of what they would like to see happen from an active transportation perspective on their central core. The holistic thing, sorry, I don't want to call it a thing. That kind of diminishes it. I would say that if, you know, we're going to do broader kind of active transportation plans for rural communities, that can happen. It will happen regardless. And if we have any communities that are interested in doing the area rate, we would probably, the functional planning that follows that would include, you know, more than just the main drag. So, you know, we could expand it. And then I'd say it's possible. I mean, with all these things, you're going to have to tell me what you don't want us to do if we're doing this, or you're going to have to staff us up to do more work. So that's kind of the reality of the situation. But I hear what the speaker's saying. I suspect there could be some opportunities if new roads and egress routes get built. And the other thing, and I've said this to Councillor Cuddle and I've said it to others, is if people have ideas for specific AT connection projects in their communities, and it's funny that Holly has her hand up because we get a fair number of those from Cole Harbour, let us know, like specific initiatives or short connections or things that could happen. At least if we're aware of them, that's, it better than, it moves it along the continuum or the possibility of it happening.
Okay, thank you, David. So yes, Holly, you have a follow-up question? Holly would.
Not really. Just to follow up with what David just said.
Yeah.
Cole Harbour Parks and Trails, for instance, and Sackville Rivers work. A few other groups as well work in conjunction with and our active transportation trails connect communities. Cole Harbour connects 5 different communities with our trail in 3 different directions, maybe. And any trail that you build that's active transportation should be able to take a fully loaded fire truck over each and every bridge. Don't ever forget that. And it has to be engineered, approved every 5 years to make sure it's safe to do that. And that costs the trail groups quite a bit. It costs the city quite a bit, but it's well worth doing to connect your communities and have back roads to get in and out. And don't worry, the fire trucks, they don't worry if they've got a key for the gates, because they just cut them open. They don't waste time looking for a key. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Holly. That's good advice. I think. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. I just want to make a clarification on this. I think the committee is trying to pass a motion as regards this presentation. Are we considering a motion regarding this presentation?
Yeah. We don't have a motion prepared because we didn't know, of course, in advance exactly what was going to be in the presentation. But
if you wish to make a motion, it will be a recommendation to the Transportation Standing Committee requesting a staff report. And
yes. I could suggest one. I can suggest a motion that this committee feels, well, that recommends to the Transportation Standing Committee that there be a staff report, because there always has to be a staff report, regarding the possibility or the desirability of holistic needs assessment for active transportation in the St. Margaret's Bay area. Would that be an appropriate motion?
I believe so, Hugh. It's Holly, and I would make that motion.
Okay, that sounds very good. Craig, would that go some way to helping you and your group?
I believe so, but I think it's bigger than just us. I think this should be a consideration for the Rural Active Transportation Initiative in general.
All right.
Can I just wondering, is it okay if I jump in?
Yes, jump in.
I'm wondering too, I'm just hearing that there's also a staff shortage. And I'm wondering if there is a motion that we move up to the the transportation committee that is a request for more funding for staffing for HRM staff to do this work. And that there is a motion to support doing more of this holistic planning prior to going into community, so that communities are being approached with plans or time. That's just what I heard from David's answer, is that's also a thing. I don't know if David, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I'm not sure if staff shortage is really what I was trying to say. It's just that there is a finite capacity to do the work we're trying to do. We are in an incredible deficit everywhere we look. Rural HRM, bad for AT. 800 kilometers within the urban service boundary should have sidewalk, doesn't have it. Disconnected bikeway network, because no bikeway network was ever built. So, we're playing catch up everywhere. You could probably like quintuple the size of our group, and it's still, that's the nature of the challenge. I think if there was a report, if we were asked to write a report about enhanced or integrated or that kind of planning in rural HRM, one of the things that we would come back with is, if we were going to try to get X number of communities done over the next number of years, this is the resources it would take. In council, you can either tell us, stop building bikeways in Dartmouth and start focusing on integrated community planning in rural HRM, or add more staff, something like that. So I don't know if you have to. I mean, I'll leave it up to you folks to know. One of my staff updates is going to be on all the new staff that we're hiring in the group. So, I don't want anyone to get the impression that there's necessarily a staff shortage, but I think there is. And part of the reason you're all on this committee is you're aware of the multiple challenges that we're facing in terms of catching up and creating the safe, accessible walking and biking spaces that communities want.
Sorry, perhaps not staff shortaging. Maybe I meant that there is a huge demand for this type of work, both from an AT perspective, but also for the other reasons that were outlined in the thing, and that HRM should be putting more funding towards, just generally speaking, putting more funding towards AT would be.
Yeah, and I mean the types of we're really talking, lots of the conversations in rural HRM are they deserve more time, than we're giving them, but it's already taking up like at least a quarter of the time of our group right now. So it's and it's because we're starting from, what we've got, which is disconnected and automobile dominated.
Okay, I'm not sure where this leaves us. I don't think it's for this committee to make any recommendations about staffing or financing, but back to the suggestion from Holly.
Mr. Chair, this is just Melinda. I'm sorry to pipe in. What I'm hearing, what I've heard here, and correct me if I'm wrong, and perhaps this is not under the holistic definition, but what I've heard our presenter say was that more importantly, that the egress routes, and we're dealing with Councillor Cuddle's area, Spryfield, lots of woods, Upper Tantallon, where my parents are, to get out of there is virtually impossible. This has been known about, that it has been a danger for many, many, many years. That has already been proven, and we already are aware of that. But what I'm hearing from the presenter is that to somehow incorporate active transportation into those egress routes, I'm sorry. I've asked this committee to, if they could, while a person is speaking, not do the chat box, because it comes in through my ear. That's why I paused. So what I'm hearing is to somehow incorporate the egress routes that are long overdue, that we've known that we should have had for the outer communities that are part of HRM, that are paying the taxes, that we incorporated them into active transportation. And I would be all for that because, you know, I want my loved ones to be able to get out in case of a fire again. And then also when it is not necessary to be able to use them for walking or biking or whatever, as Peter Zimmer, you know, recommends, other piece of mobility. That's what I'm hearing, unless I'm wrong. It's not about lack of staffing or anything of that. It's about incorporating active transportation within a way out in case of an emergency. End of thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Milena. And actually, that probably gives us a more specific motion that in this particular area, although generally in rural areas, emergency egress routes should be incorporated with, or should include and be available for active transportation. But I see Councillor Cottle has her hand up.
Thanks, Hugh. Melania's comments have got me thinking of something else now, and I forget what I was going to talk about related to the previous comments. As it tends to happen as we kind of throw these ideas around. I think what I wanted to comment was on this idea of like this holistic plan, and just to note that you know, and the comment has already been made that it's not just with Tantallon where this is an issue. It's an issue in many places. And I'm a little bit concerned that I'm not quite clear on what this motion is specifically asking for. Did someone put the motion in the chat?
Chat.
Yes, the draft motion is in the chat.
Okay, I'm trying to find the
Draft
chat.
motion. I'll read the draft motion that Olawumi has put in. That the Active Transportation Advisory Committee recommend that the Transportation Standing Committee request a staff report regarding the desirability for a holistic needs assessment with regard to active transportation in the Upper Tantallon area. That's what we got. That's what we got right now.
Yeah, and so this is where I'm like, oh my God, like where do we start with this, right? I mean, I'm trying to get an AT plan for Spryfield, which has been very kind of difficult to get off the ground. People are looking for AT, you know, strategies in other areas. So making you know, it's like, how do we prioritize? Where do we start? We've got the rural transportation piece going on. We're trying to get active transportation happening in other growth centers within Halifax that don't have AT plans. Dave, I know that, you know, I'm not clear where we're at with the updated AT strategy in regards to how do we identify priorities so that we utilize the resources that we have in an effective way. And my concern is that, you know, we got this presentation, which makes the current issue front and center of our minds right now in this dialogue, but it's not really considering all the other pieces that are also going on, and how we, you know, to Annika's point, like how do we make sure we're utilizing the staff that we have in the most effective way to start making progress? Because I don't want to be scattershot. And Dave, I mean, I don't know if you have any answers to that or any comments about it, but
could I just, this is Hugh here. Could I just throw in my 2 cents here? We really need a motion on the floor so that we can address it. What I'm hearing, and I think David might agree, is, and Craig would agree, that there is a specific problem, a major problem in the St. Margaret's Bay area because of the need to provide soon, quickly, emergency egress routes. And the opportunity is that those routes could also serve as active transportation routes. Maybe we should make the motion like that. Holly, what do you think about that? Holly?
I have to find my unmute button. Yes, I agree that there's a desirability for a holistic needs assessment, reactive transportation, and egress routes, in particular for the Upper Tantallon in an immediate, almost immediate timeline. But it's the way we should be looking at all active transportation routes. All the active transportation routes should fit fire trucks or emergency vehicles, and throughout all of HRM, in my opinion. But I'm very much willing to change that motion to include that it needs the holistic approach as soon as possible.
Okay. Now I have 3 hands up now, but we're kind of eating into our time here for the next few agenda items. So I'm not sure. As I say,
if I might suggest, continuing with that, if Patty Cuddle, David McIsaac, and myself sit down.
Sorry, who was calling? Was that you, David?
I'm sorry. I'm kind of interrupting Holly here. One thing that if I could do is talk to the group that's there is a report coming back to council, I think this fall, on egress routes and that particular topic. I could talk to the author of that report, or the group authoring it, and just get a sense from them about if and how sort of the active transportation side benefit, if you want to call it, could play in that report. I suspect without a whole lot I think it probably would have anyway, and it's just one of these things, you know, if it's a connection for egress for cars and fire trucks, it could also very easily be for active transportation. But I could we come back to ATAC next meeting and just kind of give a sense of how that could be reflected in that report, which might not need a separate motion on that particular, not kind of the bigger holistic, whether we do holistic planning in rural communities, but on whether those types of opportunities could be looked at, you know, what the municipality decides to do on egress routes.
Thank you, David. I think actually that's probably how we should leave it at the moment, that you will inquire about including active transportation in that emergency egress report, and you'll get back to us on that. Would that be okay with you, Holly?
Yes, that would be perfect.
Okay. And Councillor Cuttle?
Yeah, I think that's better because, you know, again, you have to look. I know the wildfires happened in Tantallon, and there feels like there's an urgency, but every community in HRM is in danger of wildfire on the urban wilderness interface there, and it could be anywhere next time. So we really have to look at this strategically. So I am okay with that. Thank you. I think that's better.
Okay, very good. I see Peter.
And this is Milena as well. I agree as well. Thank you, David, for that. Because it is about all the wood-lined communities that are still part of HRM.
Okay, thank you, Milena. Just a couple of minutes, Peter, before we have to move on. We don't hear your sound, Peter.
There, unmuted. Sorry. Returning to Craig's presentation, I think one of the concerns there was an imposed area rate. And I think we might want to speak to saying that should be on hold, because we're looking at this in a broader view saying, yeah, if there's exit routes being planned, what they should be planned in conjunction with active transportation. There's much to expand on this, and I will be writing stuff to expand on this, but we have one particular issue, an upcoming area rate, which may not be justified if we pull it into the heap with the emergency access. So,
okay, thank you, Peter. I think that's a whole other issue that we don't have time to deal with right now, to be honest. Maybe that should be on the agenda as a separate issue that we can discuss perhaps next month. I feel now we should move on to item 9.1.1. I believe that's where we are right now. And that is an update on the new sidewalk level of service report. And Anders Turem, who is an active transportation planner, will provide us on an update on that, with an update.
Yeah, so I have a presentation I'll share. Sorry, is someone talking?
No, go ahead, Anders. Thank you.
Okay. It's saying only the host can share this meeting.
Oh. You can share now. You've been made post.
Okay. Can people see my screen now? Yeah, okay, good.
Yes, we can.
Great. Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members of ATAC. So my name is Anders Turem, and I'm an active transportation planner with HRM. Today I'll be presenting on the new sidewalk level of service report, which was approved by Council in January of this year. So this report comes out of the 2022-2023 Public Works Business Plan. So this called for 3 things that are relevant to sidewalks. First, a review of the criteria used to identify where we should construct new sidewalk. 2, the development of a sustainable approach for addressing the backlog of sidewalks. And 3, identifying the funding necessary to address our need for new sidewalk. I'll note that originally the statement included all sidewalks, but this report is only for sidewalks in the urban tax area. So rural sidewalks, as we all know, are funded through a distinct program being worked on by a few of my colleagues. So in addition to the requests made in the Public Works Business Plan, other motivations for this report were 1, to get Council's direction for short and medium term budget planning, 2, to review our strategies for constructing new sidewalks and ensuring we're using our resources to the fullest potential. So this is especially important since Council decided to more than double our budget allocated for new sidewalks last year. 3, we're hoping to support multiple HRM goals by enabling greater accessibility to bus stops and other trip destinations. So the picture on the right here shows a segment of St. Margaret's Bay Road, which has a transit stop but no sidewalk. So obviously this is not good, and having a sidewalk would benefit people walking and rolling to get to transit. And then lastly, this report will help address the infrastructure deficit for sidewalks in the urban tax area. So to illustrate this point, we calculated there to be roughly 800 kilometers of missing sidewalk in the urban tax area that would exist if the respective road was built today. So our design standards today are higher now than they used to be, but this shows how much of a gap there is between what our current network is and what it should be. So we're not proposing to fill this entire 800 kilometer gap, though that would be great. Instead, our approach is to look at where we think the highest needs are within that network and then focus our attention and work towards those segments. So historically, we've been making decisions for sidewalk priority based primarily on a mapping tool that uses a variety of criteria to determine need. So factors in this process include proximity to pedestrian generators such as schools, daycares, parks, playgrounds, transit, and commercial and high-density residential areas. We also consider the classification of the road, so whether it's a local street, arterial road, or collector. We consider equity by using the Canadian Index of Multiple Deprivations score. We look at the segment connectivity, so how much would a particular segment of sidewalk actually benefit the larger network from a connectivity perspective, and then safety of the existing street. So during the development of this report, we re-examined each of these factors and experimented with different weightings. Specifically, we looked at the impacts of prioritizing equity and filling in gaps on major roads. The outcome of this, however, was relatively minor. So many of the streets that were already scoring high were unchanged, and low priority streets were still showing up as lower priority. And then lastly, I just want to emphasize the note at the bottom saying staff review and ground truthing is key. So while these criteria are important for determining priority for new sidewalk, we also need to consider demand, looking at the larger area, and some on the ground factors. So after using our criteria, we wound up with about 155 kilometers of missing sidewalk that we consider high need. The reason we say about and why no map is provided is because the planning level has been relatively high, and we did not come up with a final list of streets that we will necessarily build sidewalk on. Alternatively, this is just a way to get an idea of how much need there is and where it is. So the typical streets in this 155-kilometer network are 1, former rural arterial streets and collectors that are now more urban or suburban. So this would be like Middle Sackville, Trunk 1, and Larry Utek. 2, arterial and collectors that have inconsistent sidewalk. So like Bedford Highway, St. Margaret's Bay Road, and Herring Cove Road. 3, streets and communities that were more rural but are now growing and feeling the impacts of growth around them. So this would be Cherry Brook Road, Lake Loon Road, and North Preston. 4 would be streets in business parks. So we get a lot of requests for sidewalk in like Bears Lake, Burnside, and then Blue Water off of Larry Utek. And then lastly, local streets in proximity to places like schools, parks, and adjoining higher order streets. So examples here really can be found all around the municipality, but some specific ones would be Astral Drive, Tremont Drive, and a few streets in Fairview. So not included in those totals are future high need sidewalks, which will become necessary as the result of future development. So an example of this is shown here on Herring Cove Road, where sidewalks are getting built with the new subdivisions, but the sidewalks are ending in ditches on Herring Cove Road. So we know we should be building sidewalk in places like this, but because the need is generated by future development, those segments aren't always scoring high using the tool that was described earlier. So because of this issue and the high levels of growth around the city, our colleagues in planning and development are exploring options to get sidewalks built in places like this through the development process. So our proposed approach for the next 10 years contains 5 strategies. 1, continue integration with larger road rehabilitation projects. So this has been our predominant approach over the last few years, as we've always been able to find projects to integrate with during road recapitalization. This has worked so far as this saves money and is generally more efficient than non-integrative work. But the challenge here is that there's some high need areas that we're just not getting to. So one of the biggest changes coming out of this report is to focus more on standalone, non-integrated sidewalks. So this will be for missing sidewalk gaps on major sections of road that otherwise may not get built for a long time. The third approach here is to add new sidewalk on multimodal corridor projects. So this would be like Herring Cove Road, Dutch Village Road, and the Bedford Highway. 4 would be to add short but key connections like on Kempt Road, shown here, where you have a short segment of sidewalk that just disappears kind of at random. And then the last approach is to kind of experiment with faster and less expensive infrastructure options that will provide more immediate safety improvements. So perhaps something like this adaptive sidewalk in Calgary could work where there's a precast curb barrier on the street that provides space for pedestrians. While we're excited to be constructing a greater number of kilometers of sidewalk in the future, one thing that's important to note is that feasibility will always be an issue and may limit where a sidewalk can get built. So while we don't take it into account when assessing demand, we know there's going to be some significant challenges with some of the segments that we have identified due to rocks, hills, water, and/or property acquisition. So while we're more flexible now with looking at options like road narrowing and removing on-street parking, in some cases, sidewalk will just not be feasible, unfortunately. So our target over the next 10 years is to construct 55 kilometers of new sidewalk. What this looks like in the capital plan is that we'll be spending roughly $5.5 million per year until 2028, and then roughly $8 million till 2034. This will make our total budget for new sidewalks roughly $75 million. The other set of accounts funding this will be the multimodal accounts, which have a total budget of about $21.5 million. So hopefully with this money, we can build a variety of different types of sidewalk, including the gap shown here on the right on Washmill Lake Drive to the Value Village in Bears Lake. So in the context of the AT capital budget, new sidewalks will use about half of our spending. Other projects that our team will, of course, be working on and supporting include rural sidewalks outside of the urban tax area, AT regional connections, grants to community groups and community trail associations, tactical and short-term projects, land acquisition, education and promotion, amenities, and planning, studies, and design. So our main recommendations coming from this report are as follows. 1, we should be constructing approximately 55 kilometers of sidewalk on high-need segments within the urban tax boundary before 2034. 2, we should continue using an evaluation tool to identify highest need segments, fill those gaps, and then also apply a greater focus to standalone projects on major roads. And then 3, we should be exploring options to share the costs of new sidewalk with public and private sector organizations where the need is generated by new development. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions people may have.
Thank you, Anders. That's very useful. And again, we'll go through the speakers list and questions, comments. I believe Brittany McLean's still with us. Has Brittany left?
Brittany's left.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll start with Annika Roppel.
Great, awesome. 2 questions, and perhaps this is because I spend too much time on Twitter. I hear that some of the complications, particularly in areas like Bears Lake, is that there's land that is municipal, but also land that's private. So I guess my question is, are there any kind of plans for dealing with that? And then also situations like the train bridge that is currently the CA bridge that is the big, that tiny little sidewalk, and I can't remember. Is it Bears? I think it's Bears Road.
On Bears Road, yeah.
Yeah. What's that's my first question. I have 2, if that's okay.
Yeah, for the first question regarding, I guess like a mix of public and private land. So when we're constructing sidewalk, public acquisition is a choice we can make. So if the sidewalk is deemed, high priority enough, then that'll be something that we would look at. alternatively, it depends for each street, but maybe there's some space we can work with within, the right of way and land that the city already owns. So I can't say I'm too familiar with like the actual plans for streets on Bears Lake. My understanding is that sidewalks should be feasible for the most part, but I don't know, David, maybe you know something I don't.
David, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just think I'm not sure, Annika, if there is a really, I would say, serious sort of pedestrian access and accessibility issue in Bears Lake and it's between the front door of the Walmart and the Superstore and Chain Lake Drive, where we do have a sidewalk. So if that's what you're talking about, we don't get into this wouldn't build a sidewalk through their parking lot. There are other places in Bears Lake that should have sidewalk or multi-use pathway, and where usually we can build it in the right of way. And if we needed to, we would get a sliver of private land if it was like, a kind of a critical gap. But if you're talking about really what we've done on that one is just reach out to the property owners and stress the need and just communicate what we hear through 311 calls about the situation there. And I think they are going to do something like in the last, sometimes you can never really get a hold of these folks in Toronto at the Real Estate Investment Trust offices, but we have been talking to them lately, and they seem to be seriously looking at building a safer. Crossing Bears Road, by the way, is being or crossing the CN rail cut at Bears Road is something that we are just hiring a consulting company to help us improve, going back on some 2016 plans that we already have. And that's part of the AAA Bikeway program.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, am I allowed to ask my second question, or you can come back around to me?
I'm sorry?
I said I had another question, but I also...
well, we're kind of short on time, so we might get back to you later. Councillor Cottle. Councillor? I think, has the councillor left?
Yeah, sorry. No, I'm here. I was just having a keyboard issue. Okay, so I'm so glad we got this presentation, because I'm just like, oh my gosh, thank goodness we're getting a strategy for sidewalks, because really it's felt like a bit of a mystery. And what we're doing here is kind of what we need to do for the whole region, right? When we talk about egress and ATs and priority. It's amazing that people have been paying this area rate tax, but don't have sidewalks, which I think reflects why other people might be a little not so on board of signing on to an area tax without knowing what they're getting, right? And when you talk about things like Bears Lake, I mean, that goes way back to when the city first even created that park. Thinking it was an industrial park and turned it into a retail park where the developer should have paid for all those sidewalks. And now we're seeing the city on the hook for it. Well, taxes out there are declining. I think Costco's taxes that they're paying to the municipality are decreasing every year because they depreciate their building. So you gotta, all of this stuff is complicated in how we got to where we're at. And I could probably go down a deep rabbit hole with that, but I'm really glad to see that we have this strategy, we have a plan, we're prioritizing, and we've actually committed some funds to making a dent in, even if it's a small dent, at least it's a dent.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Peter Zimmer. Peter.
I guess I'll pass on this. I'd love to get into it, but time's short.
Yeah, time is short. Thank you. Milena, do you have any comments?
Yeah, just a few comments. One, David, thank you for sending that report along back in November, December, January, I don't remember. Anders, thank you for doing this. And through Walk and Roll and myself, we went through it, and under my request, I will say that to have this as a presentation, because I'm pretty certain a lot of people are not reading this. And as we are live in public, for those people who think that they are never going to use the sidewalk in their rural areas, yes, you will. Nova Scotia has the highest rate of people with disabilities, and sidewalks are essential. So Anders and David, thank you for being here and bringing up a strategy. The truth of the matter is, at some point, and I'll use Peter Zimmer's words, we are all temporarily able to, sooner or later, you're going to lose the capability to use your car, and you're going to want that sidewalk no matter where you are. Last but not least, I will say that I grew up in Calgary, and a lot of friends in rural Alberta, and in the smallest towns and villages, when they're building a Walmart, they're holding the developers, and this is for Councillor Cuddle, they're holding the developer accountable for providing in parking lots a sidewalk. Therefore, you come into a parking lot, you come into a large parking lot, you park your car, and then you get onto a sidewalk. So it is fully accessible for a person using a wheelchair, parents with strollers, walkers, etc., to get into that Walmart. It is beyond me why council cannot put that in to here. I'm all for the sidewalks. I despite what I said earlier, I'm all for raising the taxes a little bit more, not a lot, but this goes back to anything that's coming through development. Make sure that new developers you're making that part of that contract. And Anders, thank you again for doing this presentation, and on my thought.
Thank you very much, Milena. Douglas Wetmore.
Thank you, Hugh. I know we're short on time, but I've got a few thoughts that I want to share, and some of them might be crazy, so bear with me. But I don't want to undermine everything that was just presented, but there's a few numbers here that concern me. Right on one of the very first pages, you mentioned that there's roughly 800 kilometers of missing sidewalk, and of that, 155 kilometers are considered kind of the high priority, so the ones that we really want to be focusing on. And then down at the bottom, the recommendation is that we put forward a budget to tackle 55 kilometers of that within 10 years. So what we're saying essentially is, in a full decade, we want to tackle about a third of the high priority of the 800 kilometers total. And not to undermine, because I know this is a very ambitious project in itself, but that frankly concerns me, and I wish we could be a little bit more ambitious with it, which I know is a very wild thing to ask, because I know this is a very big ask in the first place. But what I'd like to see considered is more ways that we can speed this up and more ways that we can get more resources into it. I'm going to assume that at the end of the day, it's going to come down to budget and staff hours available. But my initial thought is, what can we take away from cars? If we're spending so much resources going towards road development and most notably parking, can we take some of that and put that budget towards implementation of sidewalks and active transit? Right off the bat, my initial thoughts are, could we increase the budget by looking at parking and trying to get more money out of that, whether that's removing free parking across HRM, charging higher rates for it, or if we want to get really crazy, I know Councillor Cuddle mentioned that big areas such like Bayers Lake, they're actually decreasing their tax because the buildings are depreciating. Could we not look at charging higher taxes for areas that are used as parking lots, such as basically 60% of Bayers Lake? My initial thought would be, if so much effort is being put towards parking cars in those areas, could we not consider increasing tax for land that's used for that, because it's counterintuitive to climate initiatives? I don't know if any of that is feasible or reasonable, but I felt it needed to be said. So appreciate the work you're doing. wish we could see a little bit more ambition, just because this is a very big project that I think we should be putting a little bit more importance on, and not glancing over that we're trying to accomplish a third of the high priority within a decade. I will let whoever wants to speak to that speak now.
Okay. Well, thank you, Douglas. You've probably spoken for many of us there. I don't think Anders can really respond. It's a budgetary issue. It seems to me, and it's really for council to consider that. Let's just move on. Michelle Mahoney.
Yeah, hi. Great report, Anders. That was really good. I like your cat just a second ago too. That was really cute. My only concern is, like, as you're talking about this, I think of like the IKEA and the IKEA parking lot, and how the parking lot has a sidewalk that you can walk safely to the entrance, but all around, like where you park your car, there's no curb cut to get up onto that sidewalk. So I think of like things like somebody in a wheelchair or myself, I can't step up a step. So, you know, it kind of defeats the purpose of a sidewalk if somebody can't get up onto it. So, and I find that a lot with the storefronts in Bears Lake as well, is that all of the storefront they all have sidewalks in front of their stores, but there's no curb. There's a curb cut maybe on either end. And, you know, so it can be difficult. So things like that really need to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Elizabeth Pugh.
Nothing from me, thanks you. Just thank you very much for all the information. That was really interesting, and it's great to see that things are moving forward on this regard.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Holly Woodall. No, can't hear you, Holly.
No comment.
Okay, thank you. Paul Young.
Okay, well, I'll take your comments. I've got three quick things I want to get out there. First of all, is excellent commentary. Doug, don't be shy with those kind of comments. They're awesome. First of all, for sidewalk priorities, I see this as a framework, and I think it's brilliant. And it's just a question of getting after council and getting as far into those priorities as possible. 5 years from now, you know, it'll jumble and we'll have even more priorities. So I think that that's really excellent work. I have two comments in addition to that. With this kind of thinking, I'm not exactly sure why we don't have in tandem with it cycle path type thinking, because honestly, they go hand in hand. If you don't, you're going to have people riding their bikes on the sidewalks, and that's not going to be great for everybody. So, you know, great work, but I'd love to see it bundled or included with other active transportation type stuff. And okay, I'm gonna pile on with Patty on Bears Lake. It is a terrible, terrible, inhumane place for people. How did it ever get that way? Is there not planning regulations at the onset to pay for this infrastructure and design so that it is people oriented? Now, I know the people around the table here were not involved in the design of that way back when, but can we please make sure in the future that every single project has this built in from the start? We shouldn't, as Patty said, we shouldn't be paying for it from the city's pockets. It should be designed right into the infrastructure at the get-go, and it should be human scaled, not car scaled every single time. And I'll stop there before I blow a gasket. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Paul. I just got a quick comment to make, and it's regard to actually something that came out of this committee, which was from that recommendation about active school travel. HRM is now a participant, a partner in an active school travel program. And one of the key things is to increase sidewalk infrastructure within the walk sheds of schools. And I'm just hoping, and maybe you can give me something response on this, Anders. Was active school travel to school considered in terms of the priority for sidewalks?
So no, though proximity to schools is one of the biggest factors in the decision-making process as it is now. So if your street segment that is missing a sidewalk is like within 100 meters of a school, it's going to earn a lot of points and most likely be a very high priority. But the program you're talking about is not used in the decision-making process currently.
Yeah, and that's fair enough, because it's quite recent that HRM has signed on to this. But certainly going forward, I hope that will be given considerable weight. Yeah. David, you have your hand up still.
Sure, just super quick. And like proximity to schools is probably one of the top, like a lot of those places that are in part of the high need. One of the factors that likely got some of them there is their proximity to a school. Just to address Paul's question, maybe make you feel a little bit better, is that like new sections of places like Bears Park, Bears Lake Park, the new standard is that they do have to put in sidewalks and or multi-use pathways or both. So if you look at Bears and you look at that new section where they flatten the top of the hill and on Susie Lake and Hobson Lake Drive, when those got built, they are up to the current standard and have the sidewalk and multi-use path. I mean, it's still kind of car-oriented development, but a lot of people walk out there. A lot of people walk in Dartmouth Crossing, right? Like you see it all the time. But again, we're just playing catch up to what those types of developments that would have been approved back in the 90s without sidewalks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cuttle, you have your hand up too.
Yeah, thank you, Hugh. Yeah. Now we're looking to fix it. Now, I think the issue is that, we talk about putting area rates on why can't we talk about putting area rates on Bears Lake Park so that we can help fund these sidewalks, and it's not taking away from the other priority sidewalks needed in communities. Those businesses need to make pedestrian friendly, make it more pedestrian friendly, because a lot of their workers and staff, rely on transit. A lot of their customers rely on transit. Maybe we should, think about an area rate there.
Okay, well, that's an interesting thought. I think we should move on then to our final agenda item, which is an update from David McIsaac. So this is a regular feature of these meetings. I know we've heard from David about some things, but David, do you have other items to give us an update on?
Roddy McIntyre is on the call to talk about a specific question. If I'm happy if you want to. He's been here the whole call, so if you want to talk about I think it's pedestrian signals or something like that.
Oh yes.
You see that on the agenda?
We don't have that as a specific item, but that was raised earlier as something that we needed some more information on.
It's 9.2.1 discussion on general correspondence regarding crosswalk signals.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're right. Well, maybe then we should just pass straight through to Roddy McIntyre's information on crosswalk signals. Roddy?
Hi, how is everybody? I'm Roddy McIntyre. I'm the manager, traffic services and road safety with HRM Traffic Management. So I don't have anything specific prepared. I was invited to come to the meeting, assuming that there would have been questions from the committee about the correspondence.
Yeah, and I'm who was that correspondence from? Which committee member had that concern? No?
I thought it was someone from the general public that had posed the question.
Yes, Hugh. This was a comment that came from the general public. I do have it open here if you want me to share some of the comments that were posed directly in it.
Yeah, maybe you could summarize the issue for us, Douglas.
Yes, so one of the very first asks is, why should pedestrians need to press a button in order to legally cross the street? At intersections with traffic lights, drivers are automatically given a green light at some point in the cycle. However, many of them, pedestrians see the don't walk hand unless they arrive early enough to press the button and trigger the walk signal. I'll start with that, and then I'll continue trimming this and see if there's any other points to bring forward.
So could you respond to that, Roddy, please?
Okay, so for that first point, that's not actually the case at all intersections. We have a lot of intersections that, especially in downtown Halifax, that don't have push buttons at all. So the pedestrian signal does come up. We have many more others that do have the push buttons, but the pedestrian walk signal still does come up automatically, either 24 hours a day or within certain time frames, typically up until 11 p.m. or midnight, where the walk signal will still come on automatically without having to push the button. In a lot of instances, locations there may be some locations that are kind of a little bit more remote, or they've got very low pedestrian volume where the button is still active throughout the entire day in order to get the walk signal. And the reason that's done is to help to have the signals operate as efficiently as possible in those areas. There were actually a couple of reports that went to council a number of years ago specifically about this item, setting up what we call pedestrian recall on traffic signals.
Okay, that's very good. Douglas?
I believe this was a comment that was brought up in discussion between committee members via email, but do we have a rough estimate on the percentage of how many intersections in HRM are currently automatic versus how many still require the push?
I don't have that off the top of my head. That information would actually be in one of those two council reports. What I can do is I can go and dig those up and have them sent to the committee through the clerk's office if you'd like.
I certainly would be interested in that if Hugh agrees with that.
Yes, that would be very
the rest of the
helpful.
committee.
Yeah, thank you.
And Douglas, this is Milena. I'm sorry to interject. Hi, Roddy. It's Milena.
Hi, Milena. How are you?
I'm very well today. I'm smiling, by the way.
That's good.
I want to make a quick comment that Roddy and I have worked together for quite a long time for different reasons. By 2030, and I'm speaking from a blind person's point of view, sadly, those of us who are blind or partially sighted still do have to push a button, but only once, to get the automated pedestrian signal, the doo-doo-doo-doo, and all lighted intersections by 2030, this was already written in, will be equipped with audible pedestrian signals. I too do not know, because worked with Roddy and a couple of my colleagues on how many of the pedestrian signals, if you are an able-bodied person, you come along to the sidewalk where there is a lighted intersection, that it does turn automatically now in Halifax, pretty much on the peninsula, not sure on the outskirts, but we're getting there. So I just wanted to bring that out because I think it's an important issue as well. And I didn't mean to comment on the person who wrote in earlier, but I just want to say that yeah, it's been a long road coming, and we're getting there. So Roddy, thanks for being here, and Douglas, sorry to interject, but keep on with that letter. Thank you.
Not a problem at all. I'm kind of going out of order in this letter, but I think it makes sense to. The intersection that was specifically mentioned in this correspondence was the intersection of Burnside Drive and the 111 highway. The on and off ramps have a very long wait time, and typically the light lasts for, they said, roughly about 90 seconds in this correspondence. The issue they note is that even though the light lasts 20 seconds, unless they press the button at the very beginning, they don't get the green light, so then they have to wait the full cycle, even though they would very safely be able to cross had they been there right at the start of it. But the specific asks that this correspondence requests is, first and foremost, pretty straightforward. All walk signals should activate automatically, even if no pedestrians are present. This doesn't actually slow down motor vehicles anyway, which makes sense, and I think it's pretty clear that that's what we're working towards. Understandably, it's just going to take time to shift in every intersection away to that. The second thing they mentioned, which I'll just say for the record, which was in this correspondence but may not apply to the Active Transportation Advisory Committee, is they're suggesting to remove the following sentence from the Nova Scotia Rules of the Road referring to walk signals. When these signals are operating, pedestrians must obey them rather than regular traffic signals. I believe walk signals should exist only to help pedestrians know when it is safe to cross, whereas this in practice often gives them much less time to cross than motor vehicles, increasing the time they spend waiting. Above that line, the rules say, at intersections controlled by traffic signals, pedestrians must obey the same signals as drivers traveling in the same direction. Pedestrians should not start to cross during a red or yellow signal, which I think is reasonable and sufficient. I realize there's a provincial rather than an HRM document, but I wanted to bring it up anyway. That's the direct quote from the correspondence. So again, pretty confident that is a provincial area, but wanted to make sure it was set on record that that was included as well.
Yes, that I can confirm that that's most certainly provincial. That's to do with the Motor Vehicle Act, so that's provincial legislation.
Yeah. Any other comments surrounding the intersection at Burnside and 111, or the general timeline, or is it pretty much the same as what's been said?
So that particular intersection belongs to the province of Nova Scotia. That's their set of signals. So any information or any requests to do with adjustments to the signal timings there or how the signal operates would have to go to the province.
Okay, thank you. We have just 5 minutes or so. I see Paul Young has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that because there's a couple other roads that happen to fall within the HRM that the province owns, has jurisdiction over. Why?
So the one at Burnside Drive is because it's the highway interchange with the 111. So that's why they have control of that, because it's a 100 series highway and it's the interchange ramp. So that's why they have control over that. Other roadways, they may belong to the province. Again, if they're 100 series highways, Highway 102, 103, 118, 111, they're all provincial 100 series, essentially expressways. So they belong to the province. It's their jurisdiction, it's their mandate to operate those facilities. There are some other roadways that are considered connector roadways to provincial highways or trunk roads. Some are under the jurisdiction of the province from the kind of historic aspect prior to amalgamation, when City of Halifax owned roads, City of Dartmouth owned roads, Town of Bedford, and then in the county they were owned and operated and maintained by the province prior to amalgamation. A lot of roads were then turned over to the municipality at amalgamation, and there's at this point there's also an ongoing road transfer that happens, and it has to do with changes in population and population density and whatnot. And at certain trigger points, then roadways get turned over kind of on the outskirts. They get turned over to HRM from the province. We actually just had a road transfer last year, or in 2022. It was very recent. We had had a road transfer.
Okay, thank you. I thought I saw someone else with their hand up.
It was me. I just kind of, I had a thought, but I don't, like, does the city know, or does the province know their roads? You know what I mean? Like, because I kind of deal with this with, you know, Dalhousie and the city and who owns what part of the sidewalks and like, so would we have to then now make an appointment with like invite the province to come so we can have this conversation with them?
So if you need information to do with a provincial facility, then, you know, if you want a representative here, Elizabeth works for the province. She's a provincial employee. I don't know whether she would have information specifically on, you know, traffic signal operation, but she would probably know where she could get it or who could potentially be invited to the committee to provide information.
Absolutely. I don't have that kind of stuff on my fingertips by any means, but I can, you know, if somebody requests it, I can either bring the right people or have some answers at a an upcoming meeting.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Milena, I see your hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Hugh. Roddy, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but because we are active transportation and
Sorry, I lost your audio, Milena.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
I apologize, forgive me. So I'm not sure if you're able to answer this, but because this is active transportation and we're either walking, cycling, or busing or using some other form rather than the vehicle, where are we with the getting rid of the right on a red signal? And the reason I ask this is some intersections, I'll take Almond and Windsor, for example. There is a 5-second pedestrian go ahead. And when that is going, for me, as a person who is blind, using active transportation with my guide dog, I'm stepping out and within the 5 seconds that are permitted for me to go ahead. The people that are making that right-handed turn on a red from Almond to Windsor, I've almost gotten hit 4 times in the run of 3 months because they're not looking where they are. So we either get rid of that 5-second go ahead for the pedestrian or we get rid of the right on a red-handed signal. Can you answer that if any way at all?
Yep. So we do put in the no right turn on red restriction at any number of different locations depending on the conditions there. I've just written down a note for that particular location, and I will have my team take a look at that one for you, Milena.
Okay, but do you have any knowledge of, you know, for the pedestrian signals that go like 5 seconds, we have the right of way before traffic starts to move parallel with us? But because I don't think it's actually really working.
So in general, or at locations where there's
in some of the areas, in some of the intersections, and I'll send you the other intersections offline here, but because when the pedestrians are moving 5 seconds ahead, while it is at the same time that a person can still make a right-handed turn on a red light, it does not work.
So, and again, we look at each intersection case by case to ensure we've got the conditions for the context correct. And similar to the other rules that were, you know, brought up from the letter in the Motor Vehicle Act, regardless of the signal, you know, the vehicle, and this is, we've got, you know, issues all over the map with people not obeying various traffic controls, and it's very unfortunate. And we're doing what we can to educate folks and get the information out there and enforcement and all of that. But a vehicle, even though they're permitted to make a right on red, they're still required to stop, and they're also still required to yield to the pedestrian in the crosswalk. And again, I know that's, you know, that's little comfort when somebody is disobeying the rules. But if there are locations where you would like us to have a look at for this particular item, we can certainly do that. We can have the team take a look at it.
Then I definitely Almond and Windsor, and that would be the Forum side, the northeast corner.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hugh Millward here. I just want to jump in. Personally, I feel there should be no right turn on red, period,
Thank you.
right across the city and right across the province. What's the chance that that might happen?
I really can't speak to potential for that to happen right across the province. That's again that you're getting into kind of widespread impact and would require provincial legislation for that.
Oh, even on city-owned streets, then that would require the province?
Well, if you're going to do a blanket ban on it without putting up signage everywhere, it would require legislation.
Okay.
And similar to any other restriction, you know, you have the sign there, you expect people to obey it without continuous enforcement. A lot of times it's, you know, it's unfortunate, it's hit and miss. That's not to say we won't do it just because we know some people will disobey it, but you know, a sign isn't necessarily going to give you 100% protection. That's problematic. We recognize that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being here and answering our questions. Douglas, you have your hand up. I'll give you 2 minutes.
I promise I'll make it quick. This can be a discussion for another day, but if we as a committee wanted to potentially continue the discussion and put forward a motion encouraging council to push for banning right on reds, I would love to see that conversation happen at this committee, but we'll save it for another day because we've got 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Douglas. Yes, we really should close our proceedings today. Thank you again, Roddy, for being here and answering questions.
My pleasure.
And with that, we get to date of next meeting, which is May 16th, 2024.
Sorry, Chair.
I'm sorry, Oluwumi?
Okay. For item 9.1.2, are we deferred it for the next meeting?
Yes, the next meeting is item 11 in our agenda, and it's May 16th. Did I say something different?
Update item 9.1.2 for David. Should we defer it to the next meeting?
We jumped over David and never went back to him, I think is the
Oh,
issue.
yes.
Yes.
Okay, I understand that. So, David, you've got your hand up.
I said I can give you like a lightning staff update and an answer to a question you had earlier in the meeting before 6:30 if you want.
Okay, away you go.
Okay.
Lightning.
So just I was messaging with Mike Connors from Transportation Planning, who's working on that egress report, and he will part of kind of the side benefits that get discussed in the report can look at sort of the active transportation connections in some of these communities. So I think I will get a chance to look at that report. So I think I can kind of reflect what I heard earlier in the committee.
Okay.
There. So I'll let you know that.
Okay, that's very good. I appreciate that.
A few other quick updates. We've got we're hiring at least 3, maybe as many as 4 new staff members in the next month. So I think you'll see some new faces and some more capacity in the group. Okay, the shared micromobility. This committee's been pretty active to advise us on approaches for that. So the pilot project, we expect an RFP to go out in the next couple of weeks. So it's going to be kind of status quo with the 2 sort of e-scooter companies that HRM doesn't have a relationship with operating for a while, but the transition will happen hopefully later this year to a more regulated approach. Upcoming engagement on AT facilities. Before June, we should be doing some work on the Graham's Grove crossing project, which looks at a bunch of different active transportation crossings of the 111, kind of between Micmac Boulevard over to Portland Street. in connecting kind of East Dartmouth to downtown Dartmouth. So you should see that. Oh, it's Dartmouth heavy. Plus, look at the Slater Street local street bikeway, public engagement on that, and on the connection between the Wise Road bike lanes down to Alderney Landing. So that should be happening late May, June for both those projects. There's more. I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize that we sort of skipped over your item just because I wanted to get through to Roddy McIntyre. But
no, that's good. I'm glad you did that, just because he doesn't get to this committee very much, and I just wanted the committee to have the opportunity to do Q&A with him.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot, then. And as I said, date of next meeting is shown as May 16th. We'll adjourn this meeting, but I do need a motion to adjourn from someone.
Milena says adjourn.
Oh, okay, Milena. And we don't need a seconder for that actually anyway. And so with that, thank you very much, everyone. And